Gettysburg National Military Park. My name is Dan Welch. I'm a park ranger here at Gettysburg. And this is our 10 o'clock demonstration this morning here with the Irish Brigade. During the demonstration, we have a couple of safety announcements for you. First and foremost, we need to make sure that you stay on that side of this very sturdy, strong government barrier that we have built for you here for your safety and for the demonstrators' safety. Also, to let you know, they will be firing their weapons during this demonstration. It can get loud. So if you have small children or an animal with you, you may want to make sure you have a hold of them as the firing demonstration continues. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our unit here and our unit's commander this morning. But before I do, I want you to know that these folks are all volunteers. They have spent their money and their time to come here to Gettysburg this weekend and share this period of our past with us. So how about a round of applause for our volunteers this weekend? All right, go ahead, guys.
Good morning, and thank you for coming. Before we fire, I want to tell you a little bit about our unit and a little bit about what you're going to see demonstrated. We represent a company of the 28th Massachusetts. It was raised in Boston, of Irish descent. It was a peal that went out throughout the country to different nationalities, the Germans and Italians and the Irish, to kind of demonstrate their civic pride and also to join in, to become accepted as American citizens. That was a big thing to them. The Irish were, looked down upon in some quarters, and they felt that this was going to be a good way to demonstrate that they truly were Americans. They had some secondary ideas, especially the leader that put together the Irish Brigade, the leaders that did. 3 regiments from New York, Irish, 1 from Boston, us, and 1 from Philadelphia. The Philadelphians, I guess a lot of Irish from Philadelphia had already enlisted in the other units, so they only got to be maybe half Irish. They had a lot of nationalities, but they joined and served with the Irish Brigade. After this, come down to the camp, see the reproduction of their flag. We're proud of being Irish, and we're proud of being soldiers in the United States Army. Of course, Massachusetts regiments came into state service and then became put into the federal Army. So they weren't regular Army, they were volunteers, and that's why it's 28th Massachusetts Volunteer Infantry. They were not able to join the Irish Brigade right away because they were diverted to the Carolina coast, an expedition there in the 9th Corps. They came into the Irish Brigade right after the Battle of Antietam. And you guys probably are history buffs. At Fredericksburg, the Irish Brigade famously attacked the sunken road on Mary's Heights and did very well, but took a lot of casualties. And they had suffered kind of constant casualties. After Fredericksburg, they were at a low. The 28th Massachusetts, when they got here, had about 220 men. They were the smallest brigade in a fairly small division, and marched from here to when the 3rd Corps was suffering to the wheat field and fought there. You'll see our monument is at the Stony Hill, and I'll talk about that later when we finish up. They were at a low point when they got here. General Marr, who had been a formative person in forming the Irish Brigade, had actually left the Irish Brigade. He left it in capable hands, but they even had a funeral mass in New York at his instigation to sort of say the Irish Brigade as it was, it barely exists anymore. And that improved during the war, but this was a low point for them. And I'll get back to that after we do the demonstration about the continuation of that. So this represents about half the number of men that were in Company B of the 210 men in the regiment. This is about 1 platoon of them. I'm the captain. In fact, I didn't tell you, my name is Joe Pankey, and I hope you'll come down to our camp afterwards and talk to some of us. men now are at rest, and I want to start now on the weapons. They're at rest. That means they've stacked their weapons, and they have to stay in the area, but they can drink or talk or do anything as long as they stay in sight and sound so that they can come back up to the line. So the stacked arms is very convenient. It establishes their line. So when they've established their line, they can rest, they can come back onto the line right where their weapon is. And notice what they've used to stack them is the bayonet. The bayonet is on the end of the rifle. It has a holster on the side. The bayonet is kind of a misunderstood weapon. The statistics show that the bayonet wounds were not as prevalent as you think they were, but nobody really wanted to get that close. Before the bayonet was invented, they used to have to put pikemen in the European armies with them to ward off anybody who got too close, because the weapons cannot be loaded very quickly. So the bayonet is a psychological weapon. Hopefully you'll intimidate the other side so that they will leave, they will retreat. It also is a psychological weapon when you think about it. If you have a weapon that at best you can load 3 times a minute, soldiers might not have too much confidence in what's going to happen after they use up their cartridges, after their weapon starts to get fouled, and they can load slower and slower. So assuring the soldier that they have something to defend themselves with is a psychological plus for our side, and a psychological deterrent to the other side. So what the corporal here has is a Springfield rifle. It's a .58 caliber weapon. It fires a conical projectile. People will call it the mini ball because it was invented by a Frenchman named Minet, and Americans pronounced it mini. But it had been further developed by the U.S. government, and we call it the Pritchard round. It's 58 calibers. It's over ½ an inch in diameter. It has a hollow space in the bottom, so when the gunpowder goes off, it spreads the cone into the rifling of the barrel. It is a rifle. It has an extreme range. It is much better than the smooth bores that the New York regiments had in accuracy. The 69 caliber weapons that the New Yorkers carried fired a round ball with 3 buckshot actually in it. So in a sense, it was a great short-range weapon, but it wasn't necessarily a good effective long-range weapon. The Army did not concentrate with volunteers on accuracy as much as they concentrated on loading it properly. In fact, looking forward to when they would be in battle and realizing soldiers would be under a lot of stress, they had to kind of drill and drill and drill into them how the weapon is loaded properly. If you could turn around, he has a leather cartridge box on his hip, and in it is 40 cartridges. They're wrapped in paper, and they contain the Pritchard bullet and gunpowder wrapped in kind of brown paper. It is 2 of the elements we need. The other is a percussion cap. You see it the rifle has a, you could turn back around. The weapon has a hammer that comes forward when you pull the trigger, and it hits a little cap, almost like cap gun caps that we had, or at least I had when I was a kid. It has fulminated mercury in it, so when it's hit, it pops like a toy gun cap. It sends a spark through the cone into the breech, sets off the black powder that's in there, which propels the bullet down the barrel. So you can see, if I was under stress and I put the projectile in first and then the gunpowder, not only will the weapon not fire, but it won't be fireable. The other feature that's kind of a big mistake area, for example, is it has a ramrod. To get the bullet to projectile the seat in the weapon, it's pushed down with a ramrod, and as the weapon gets fouled, the black powder is very dirty, it takes more and more effort. Without a ramrod, your weapon is not usable. So making sure that the soldiers remove the ramrod from the barrel and put it back where it belongs was another thing that they worried that people would do. And then the biggest mistake could be you didn't realize you didn't fire and you load another round, and in the heat of battle. So they started off with teaching the soldiers to load in 9 steps, and we're going to demonstrate that as we prepare to do a company volley, and we'll talk about why the company volley would be useful to them in just a minute. Other things that I can say, he has a haversack, and this is for his food. It's intended for food, but because it's so much like those of you that have messenger bags or satchels or purses, it's intended for food, but if there's your pipe, your tobacco, something you need right away, that's going to migrate into there. Coming to the battlefield, they would have worn packs or blanket rolls and anything else they would have to carry in there. I mentioned there's 40 rounds in his cartridge box. Oftentimes they would be issued another couple of packages of cartridges, a little packet with 10 cartridges and 12 percussion caps in it, that they would have to stow somewhere on their body so that they could reload their cartridge box. It became very hard to supply enough ammunition for them to stay in action because the 1,000-round boxes of ammunition weighed about 100 pounds. So getting them to the men was a challenge. Here at Culp's Hill, the guys there actually had great success with when the soldiers had fired about 40 rounds, if there was another unit that could take their place, they could go back, reload their cartridge boxes, and quickly try to clean their weapons so that they could stay in action. So, he also has a canteen, very important, and there's the sheath for his bayonet. And Corporal, Sergeant, thank you very much. You can join your regiment.
Thank you.
So now we talked about the stacks. We don't have the bugler here with us today. The bugler would sound a call, and I will just give the first sergeant those directions.
Company B, fall in! Take arms! Unfix it!
Okay, I mentioned that they taught the soldiers to load in what we call load in 9 times, meaning there's 9 steps to the process. So as he gives the order, I will give a little brief idea of what's going on.
Load in 9 times, load!
Okay, at the command load, the first step, the soldiers are going to their cartridge box, opening it, and getting their hand on one of the cartridges.
Handle cartridge!
They're taking the cartridges out, and one hand is holding their weapon in front of them, one hand is holding the cartridge, and at the gunpowder, the black powder area, there's a tab that sticks off where the cartridge is folded. They're putting that between their teeth and holding it at their mouth.
Tear cartridge!
Tearing the cartridge with their teeth. They had to have some good teeth to tear that off. And they're moving now the open container with the black powder up, and they're holding it next to the muzzle of their weapon.
Charge cartridge!
Pouring in the black powder and taking the projectile and seating it in the muzzle of the weapon.
Draw! Fire!
We talked about the rammer. They've drawn it and are getting it ready.
Ram cartridge!
And they will push the projectile and the powder down and seat it tightly in the breech of the weapon.
Return rammer!
Again, an important step, because if you lose your rammer or if you forgot to take it out of the barrel, the more practice you have in putting it back, the better off you are. Some people would say that slows them down. Why don't they just stick it into the ground? Well, what if they had to move? What if something went wrong? So they studiously return the rammer.
Prime!
There's a cap box on their belt. They're bringing the weapon up, and you'll notice that their feet are not what we would use for shooting positions today. Now we're supposed to take a good stable stance. The front rank is going to keep their feet in that T because they have to be disciplined for the rear rank to be able to effectively shoot over their shoulders. So their goal when they fire, the rear rank will move and go between the heads of the men ahead of him, and they're cautioned and trained to have the hammer and the muzzle equidistant from the guy's ear ahead of you, so that they're not in the blast zone of either of those two explosions. What we're going to do is fire a volley. Before we do that, stand by. Before they do that, I want you to imagine there's 10 companies here. Firing a volley empties your weapons, and it's going to be at least 30 seconds before you could reload. So firing the whole regiment firing at one time would have a whole regiment of guys loading. So picture that we may be firing a volley. Not the next unit to us wouldn't. The next unit to us would, so that this fire would come from components of the line, and as they're reloading, at a certain point the order would be given for those other companies to fire, so that they're not firing all at once. Sometimes they did, but mostly when they were trying to advance, they're going to fire a volley and then move forward with the bayonet to get closer to the enemy. So this is a volley. This is the first explosion you're going to hear. It shouldn't be too bad because they're firing away from you, but this is where, if you have kids or pets, probably reassure them.
Hey! Hey! Load!
So now they're going to load at will. So they've been trained that way for a long time, but the goal is that they will do the steps on their own in a more and more rapid pace as they become proficient and as they become veterans. So they're loading all at once. While they load, let me tell you about what we're going to do next. Another way you could manage fire is have fire by rank. The rear rank would fire while the front rank stands by. Then as the rear rank are loading, the person in charge would kind of gauge when we're about halfway to be loaded in the rear rank, then would have the front rank fire. So instead of that 30 or more seconds, you're hopefully closing that gap. So that could be general fire in the whole regiment.
Firing by rank! Rear rank! Hey! Hey! Ah! Load!
So as we said, the rear rank is loading, the front rank is standing by. When the sergeant estimates that they were about halfway loaded, they can go ahead and have the rear rank fire. While they're loading, look at how important the sergeants don't fire. They stay in the rear of the line and control things, push people forward. If someone in the front rank falls, the sergeants would be the ones to put people from the rear rank into the front rank and keep the line solid and not have gaps in it. The sergeants would also help, if they could, with fixing any problems that could be quickly fixed. Also keeping people from who aren't wounded from leaving the ranks. The sergeants extremely important in how the unit functions. They're like the foreman of the workers who are up there on the line. Corporals are in the line. Corporals are real important in leading the men, but they were kind of glorified privates.
Hey!
Stand by, stand by.
Commence! Fire!
Stand.
Ready? Aim. Fire.
What they're doing now is firing by file.
Fire. No.
Go.
Ready? Aim.
I'd like you to notice about this is how hopefully calm and regimented they are as they move from the right of the company to the left of firing. You're firing by file. Unless you're told otherwise, you continue from that point to load and fire at will. So the reason we did this, if you want to have everybody fire at will, load and fire as fast as you can, if you gave that command just for everybody to fire, most everyone would fire it immediately, and you would have a long lapse. What the goal is to have general fire through the whole regiment in a paced way. So what fire by file does is it starts a constant fire instead of waiting for the speed of the soldiers to catch up to the firing. So it gives you an even general fire.
Ceasefire! Ceasefire!
At the command ceasefire, they continue to load, but they don't fire anymore. Something's happening. Maybe they're going to fire a volley and move forward. But they're loaded. They're still in action here. The weapons are loaded. Day like today, with moisture, it's not so much that the cartridges get wet because they're pretty well protected by the leather and the tin boxes that they sit in, but the muzzles of the weapon, which always tend to be pointing upward, get moisture in them, and moisture can affect the powder in the weapon just enough that spark from the percussion cap can't ignite the powder. And now you have a loaded weapon that can't be fired. So we're going to finish firing with a volley, another volley, and then what they're going to do after that is they're going to put percussion caps on the cone of their weapon and fire just those. So after the volley, you'll see them fire and it'll just sound like cap guns going off, and what that is intended to do is give an extra safety measure that the weapons are actually loaded. When you think about the stacked arms or the soldiers marching, having a loaded weapon was not what they wanted people to have. It's just asking for a problem. So they loaded when they knew they were going to need to fire, and if they weren't going to fire, their weapons needed to be clear. Our weapons need to be clear the same way for weapon safety.
Fire by company! Ready! Hey! Shoulder, arms! Prime!
So this is what I was talking about. They're going to clear the weapons.
Come to Sherwood Prime.
You can see how much it might remind you of the cap guns we had as kids. Though we weren't disorganized.
Company at extreme elevation. Ready! Aim! Fire! Prime!
Sort of reminds you of cap guns?
Yes.
Yeah. It's very much the same.
What kind of range did they have?
They have a long range. But when you get to long range, the sight's only sighted to 300.
Aim!
They didn't, like I said earlier, they didn't worry as much